am sat here thinking of you once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to be the first to welcome you to San Juan. It will take the captain a few moments to taxi the aircraft to gate. With your safety in mind, we request that you remain seated.
Counting down the days to call you mine. Mine. In the end, I know that we will be just fine. Just fine. What I found in you, I know it's hard to find. You're my world, my everything. You are my life. You are
Welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be talking about Puerto Rico. Many of you know that I went there for about 4 or 5 months. I didn't know anyone when I went there. I kind of just went because I was tired of the snow and it's kind of a long story. But anyway, today I'm going to be sharing a little bit of my journey there, why I even chose Puerto Rico, what happened while I was there, and why I'm no longer there today. To begin with, we gotta rewind back 2 years. I was actually in Costa Rica, just kind of going to Bible college, absolutely loving life at the time. And then that's whenever the big dramatic pandemic decided to hit us all out of nowhere, and I had to go home to Maryland. I was completely devastated, did not have that in my plan at all. I actually started working at a bakery here because I figured might as well be making money while I'm, just living here doing nothing. And it was really hard because I was like living in these tropic, beautiful place in Costa Rica and had to come back to the snow, and it was just a lot. And of course I couldn't really see anybody. It was a big change. Anyway, I had a coworker at this bakery who did not know much about geography, but that's okay because thanks to him I actually went to Puerto Rico. So he would ask me all the time about Costa Rica because I had just come from there, and he would often say Puerto Rico meaning Costa Rica, which is a common mistake. And so one day he was asking me if the borders of Puerto Rico were open yet, and I simply told him no, Costa Rica's borders are still closed. But as soon as he said that, the wheels in my head started turning, and I remembered that Puerto Rico is part of the United States. So I was like, well, maybe they wouldn't be able to lock me out, So as soon as I got home, I went and did a bunch of research on this topic about Puerto Rico, about moving down there, what it's like, is it expensive, is it cheap, what could I do there, right? As soon as that happened, it just more and more stuff started coming in, and it just made sense to go. Even pandemic or no pandemic, like it just made sense as a first step because I've always wanted to move to a Spanish-speaking country like on my own, and it just was a nice step because it was still part of the United States, so I still could keep my phone company. I could work there if I wanted to. I could find help in English if I needed to, but it was still like a different culture in Spanish and almost an entirely different country. So it was a really nice like halfway point. So I decided to go ahead for it. I decided to go for it anyway. One of my close friends recommended that I try to have some sort of contact down there. So I found this Spanish immersion school called Isla, and oh my word, their school is so amazing. It's like a small family-friendly school. All the teachers really know what they're doing, and they're just there to help you and just so loving. Highly recommend it to anyone. So I actually found for the first 2 weeks I was going to stay through their program with a host family and participate in the Spanish classes throughout the weeks. So I did that, and I remember arriving in Puerto Rico feeling completely terrified, very nervous and anxious about what I was even doing there. It was very exciting too because I kind of had this feeling of like I have no idea what the next few weeks are holding. Like, it's completely unknown and up in the air. It was really exciting.
It will take the captain a few moments to taxi the aircraft. Okay? With your safety in mind, you request that...
So I went to my host family, which she was a single widow, and I was there also with another student, which was nice because we were able to explore the city together, and he had been there beforehand, so he kind of showed me around. So I started taking classes. Classes were 3 hours, 5 days a week, and that was really good. I really loved that. I ended up leaving the host family after 2 weeks simply because I couldn't keep affording that. It was pretty pricey if you wanted to stay longer. Like, I'm really thankful that Isla, the program, is able to provide that for especially people like the lady I stayed with as a single widow. Like, that is her main income. Like, I'm glad they pay her the right price. I really am. But for me personally, I was like, I can't keep doing this forever. So I ended up finding an Airbnb. So, as far as making friends goes, that was something really, really hard for me, especially at the beginning. I just remember being so lonely. I'd like call my friends back here all the time in Maryland, or my mom or my sister, whoever, and I'd just chat with them all the time, just because it was so hard making friends, because Puerto Rico is a very heavily party influenced area. Like, people go there to get drunk, to take drugs, whatever, just they are big partiers. So, and that's just not really my cup of tea. So I was kind of like, this is hard. Like, that's where you meet people, but I don't want to make those kind of friends anyway. So how do I go about even making friends? Well, I ended up going to a church called Connected Life, which I really loved because it was bilingual. It was a very small church. Like, right off the bat, like, people come and like talk to you, and it was just a very lively church too. I really enjoyed it. So I met someone there who just kind of took me under their wing, like, first day I showed up, and she invited me to this women's Bible study where I met other people, where I met people from another church who had like a young adults group, and it just kind of started spinning from there. But I will say that was not until the end. Like, it was really hard making friends at the beginning. So that was something very difficult. Like, if you don't know people right away, it's hard. But I do appreciate Isla, the Spanish learning program, because right off the bat, you have friends. Like, they're just there. And I remember specifically 3 weeks into the program, a lady from Alaska, her name was Christina, and she was a Christian, and I was just so excited to talk to her. Like, I was just like a breath of fresh air meeting someone who was just not all about drinking and, I don't know, partying. So that was really nice. And at the end of her time there, she was like, hey, I'm going on a weekend trip just around the entire island. Do you want to come with me? And I was like, well, yeah, I want to come with you. Like, if I don't do this now, I might never do it. So we drove around the whole island. She rented a car, and we spent the night in, I forget where we spent the night. But anyway, it was a super fast weekend thing, but it was just so much fun, like so much laughter, so much good conversations. Got to explore all kinds of things. Like, she was in the army, and so, like, I don't know, I just loved hearing all of her stories, and it was just a really neat time. And that was definitely a God-given moment where at the time I just felt like I needed friends so badly. Everyone I was surrounded with was just not good influence, and I didn't know how to handle it all, and she just came in at the right time, and her background was all about partying, and so I think God used that to, like, speak into my life about that. So that was really, really good.
Oh boy. No doggy. Hi.
Loved you from the moment that we met.
Like, That stingray was like the smallest stingray.
Every single day, you know you shine, shine. In the end, I know that we will be just fine, just fine. What I found in you, I know it's hard to find.
So, as far as finding a job, I moved to my Airbnb, like I mentioned before, and immediately after that, I started on weekends. I'd go out to different coffee shops, different restaurants that were walking distance from my Airbnb, and I would ask them for if they needed employees or if they knew a business that was hiring. In the best Spanish that I could come up with, I would just ask anyone and everyone that I could. I got a few people being like, here, just leave your name and number, we'll get back to you maybe, or maybe if one of our employees quit, but right now we're good, so hang tight. And it was hard too because I knew I was only going to be there for 4 months. Like when I went to Puerto Rico, I intended to just live there, but then I signed up for this program in Mexico for 2 months, and so I knew I was only going to be there in Puerto Rico for another like 3 months. So that was also challenging because I knew I wasn't going to be there full time, and who wants to hire someone who's just going to leave, right? So anyway, there was this particular place really close by my Airbnb called Lote 23 or Lot 23. It was basically just this big lot that I think it was 2 siblings someone wanted to turn it into a parking lot, but they decided to take this idea from France because there's a lot of these in France, I'm not really sure. But basically turn it into like a big lot full of different food trucks, food stands, and have like a bunch of like dangling Christmas lights everywhere. They had like live music. It was a very like upbeat place, and it's a very like hidden place. Like it's definitely touristy, but every tourist that comes there, I'm always asking them, I'm like, how did you find out about this place? Because it's kind of like the secret information. Like, oh, I knew a guy who told me about this place. I don't know how to explain it. It's just a really cool vibe. So I'd go there all the time just to study for Spanish. There's a bunch of like chickens that just wander around. Actually, in all of Puerto Rico, it's kind of weird. And pigs.
Yes, I know, yes, I know, yes, I know now. Oh, yes, I know now.
And I remember there's a little shop that had coffee, and I really wanted to work at a coffee shop. So I asked the guy, I'm like, hey, are you guys looking for work? And he's like, no, I don't think we are right now. Sorry. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So fast forward to another week or so, I was back there again, and I just remember sitting there and thinking, man, like I really need to work here. Like this would just be so much fun. So I went back to that coffee booth, and I asked the guy, I'm like, hey, do you know if any of these little kioscos are looking for workers? And he's like, I personally don't know, but you can ask that lady over there in the black. She is the security guard, and she would know. So I went over there and I talked to her, and I'm like, hey, I'm only here for like 3 or 4 months. Like, do you know if any of these places are hiring right now? And she's like, yeah. She's like, come with me. And so I start walking with her, and she takes me to this little pizza kiosco where I meet this very kind lady, and she gives me a number, and she tells me that, or she takes my number and she gives me a number, and she tells me that he will be in contact with me in the next week or so. I was like, great. So I was super excited. I remember going and telling my teacher all about it, and he was really excited for me because that meant I'm really going to be able to practice my Spanish and be forced to use it. And so, yeah, the next week I get a call from my boss, and he luckily knew some English, so we ended up having like a conversation, I guess an interview, I'm not really sure, about like what I was doing there and like me being there for only 4 months, and he was totally fine with that, which I thought was so surprising at the time. But then come to realize in Puerto Rico, people just like get jobs and then quit like 2 weeks later all the time. So for them, like knowing someone was gonna commit that amount of time was a lot, and that's not the mentality I had coming into it, so I was really shocked. But anyway, I started the next day working full-time. I started in their little pizza kiosco, and then they had another kiosco that was like Israeli food. So they had like falafel, stuffed pita sandwiches. They had like hummus and cocktails and that kind of thing. So I started in the pizza one. That was very stressful. I remember my first day. It was a lot of English and Spanish and just so much stuff going on that I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. So that was pretty crazy. Eventually I got pretty good at pizza stuff, and then they moved me up to the Israeli food, and that one just for some reason clicked in my head a whole lot easier, and they just then from that point on kept me up in the Israeli food stand, and I loved it. It was so much fun. It got to the point too that they were so low on employees that they would just have me in the Israeli food stand all by myself. Oh, and let me tell you, that was so stressful. Like, I think back on that some days and I'm like, how did I do that? Like, it was so much. Like, this is what it would be like all the time. Buena.
Yo quiero pedir un falafel y un parguillot y también un titos con toronja rosado, por favor. 15.84. Buena, un rapidito. Then I would run over here. Oh, I would make their trago con titos y toronja. Mix it all together. Salud. And then I would run over here and mix up their falafel in the fryer, their parrilla. I would start everything. Run back and be like, okay, buena, ¿cómo puedo ayudarle?
And I'd be like running from one kiosco to the other. Like, if someone ordered a pina colada, I would have to go down to the other kiosco and get it. And it was just like a lot of, like, at the end of the day, I really felt like I got a full workout in. Like, it was a lot. And I will say it was probably one of my favorite jobs, but I'd never be able to do it full time because, like, I wouldn't be able to go back and do it. But those 3 or 4 months that I was there, it was perfect. And I'm glad it's over, but I also really miss it some days, not gonna lie. And I had one specific coworker that I just loved. Like, her and I hit it off so well. We were both bilingual mostly, and like my Spanish was not as good as her English, but it was just really fun. And we both like kind of had the same mentality about like keeping things organized, keeping things clean, keeping things fast. And when people would come and we worked together, it was just like, it was so much fun because like we could keep on top of things, you know? And it was like you never fall behind. So definitely some good memories in there, but super stressful. Probably wouldn't go back. So now let's talk about why I am not there right now. So to start with, I was in Mexico City and I'm planning some other fun, exciting adventures in the future, which both of them need a lot of money for. So I decided the best option would be to come back here to Maryland where I don't have to pay rent in my family's house. And I, like in Puerto Rico, I would have had to pay expensive rent. Like, goodness, down there it is expensive. Like, I'm not from New York or anything, so to me, I'm like, why am I paying all this money for this tiny little room that doesn't even have a window, you know? So anyway, I don't have to pay rent. That's a big thing. Public transportation, like, of course, like I have to pay for gas and stuff, but Uber down there is expensive, which is another point to have. So to begin with, I'm not there right now because I need to save up money, and I can't save a lot of money there. I could save more here. Minimum wage is also higher, so that's helpful. Another thing, Puerto Rico has terrible public transportation. Some days I just wanted to get out of the city so badly just because it was overwhelming and I wanted to get into the jungle. I don't know, whatever I could take, I would have done. But you have to be at least 21 to rent a car, and I was only 20. And I called about every car rental place asking them if I could pay an extra fee or something just to rent a car, and all of them were like, nope, sorry, we can't do that. And it was just so disappointing because I just wanted to get out of the city sometimes, and like I could only go about as far as I could walk, and that was pretty hard. And of course there's Uber, but Uber is expensive. Like some days it's fine, like maybe 5-minute drive could be like, I don't know, $7. But then the next day it could be like $21. Like, you never know. And it's just not very reliable. And I remember counting up everything that I paid for Uber and how much I pay for gas, like here in the country or something, where I have to drive like 40 minutes to get to a Walmart. and it really, like, it was way too much money paying for Uber. It would have been better to get a car down there. So if I ever go back, I'd definitely buy a car for sure. And I'd probably even live like in the mountains and then just drive into the city or work remote, because the city was a lot. Like, I enjoyed it. They've got a lot of fun stuff to do there. Like, Viejo San Juan was beautiful, very touristy though, and that was hard, like living amongst the tourists all the time, and of course other Puerto Ricans treating you like a tourist, and I'm like, I'm not a tourist, like I'm not just here to abuse you, like I am here, I live here. I mean, of course it was only 4 months, but like I tried really hard to engage in the culture. So that was one thing. Public transportation was not great. Another thing, what do I want to talk about first? Another thing are the men, Puerto Rican men. Not all of them, obviously, but there's a lot of like catcalling, a lot of inappropriate comments that come with being down there, especially as a single girl who looks like she is a foreigner and not from there. If I was like in the touristy areas, it wouldn't be so bad, but you'd still get it. And like when I'd walk to class, which was in Hatorrey, it was like an hour walk, and I would definitely get so many comments, and it just kind of like this anxiety would always build up inside of me. And like I remember walking out some days and like, Jesus, please, just today, like don't let anyone say anything, because I just didn't feel like dealing with that. And it just kind of gives you this feeling of being weak and like they're stronger than you are, and like I don't know, it's just this terrible feeling. If you felt it, you know exactly what I mean. It is not fun. And it just kind of felt like Puerto Rico had a lot of that. And when I was with my friend in the first few weeks, I hardly got any of that. So I'm sure if you were there with friends, or like if you're married, like that makes a world of difference. But like if I want to go live there by myself, I think that would be extremely hard to deal with that all the time. So, and one other downside to Puerto Rico that I did not love was just how heavily American influenced the place was. So I actually grew up in Mexico, and like I was in Costa Rica for a while. So for me, I could really see how much American stuff was going on, and I didn't like it. I mean, some people love that, and that's totally fine. And for me, I have to also put out a disclaimer that I was mostly in the city, which of course is going to be more Americanized and stuff. Out in the country, out in the mountains, I'm sure that is a whole nother story, which by the way, the mountains were my all-time favorite part of Puerto Rico. Like, it was beautiful. I love just seeing the culture, meeting people from the mountains. I was always so excited when I met someone from there, like my Uber driver or something. I'm like, you're from the mountains? Like, why did you move here? Do you like living in the city? And it's just, I loved it. So that was a hard thing for me, is just seeing how American influenced it was compared to other Latino countries. And just, I don't know, I feel like there was a lot of culture being lost. But of course you have the people who do cling tight to their culture and are very proud to be Puerto Rican. And I loved meeting the people like that. And that was really cool. But I do feel like there's a danger of their culture being lost, at least in the city. I don't know. I just love the Puerto Rican culture that I did see. So it makes me sad to see like the American culture that's like coming in and pushing them out. So that was another downside. But overall, I think I would move back to Puerto Rico. Again, like I said, I would definitely buy a car. I'd probably live out in the mountains and maybe drive into the city when I'm feeling like I want to be in the city. But I don't think I could live in that city again. Like, it was a lot just being there by myself and all of that. So I definitely recommend it. Like, even just going on a weekend trip or whatever it may be, that is one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. It is gorgeous. The weather is, oh my word, always amazing. I used to get cold when it got down to 73. I'm like, okay, time to throw on the sweater. Like, it is cold now. And I just loved it. And I'd love to go back. Like, I miss my friends from down there. And just, I don't know. There's so many very, very kind people that I met down there. I absolutely love their culture, their accent. Even though their Spanish is hard to understand, I just freaking love their accent, and also like their slang. their music, everything. It is a beautiful place. Definitely should visit it. 10 out of 10 recommend it. There are just those things I wanted to point out. I didn't want to offend anyone, but I thought they were worth mentioning because before moving, I had done a bunch of research and I didn't really hear a whole lot about it. Maybe the public transportation, but the other stuff, not so much. So it is up to you to decide for yourself. Thank you for watching and listening to my very long story.